I make an effort on days I don't feel well to wear something nice because I know psychologically it's going to help heighten, my self-esteem essentially. I mean, it's a true thing. It's like fake smiling for 5 minutes and eventually you're really smiling. It shows how you feel about yourself and how maybe you think people see you even.
This is the Energy Within podcast, all about accessing, nurturing, and building your energy and confidence so that you can design your life the way you want. My name is Carrie Jokala. I am your host. I am a Reiki practitioner, a fitness instructor, a wife, a mom to 2 little boys. And today we're talking to Tiffany Cross Luciani. She is a branding expert. She has a company called The Image Option, and she helps people, entrepreneurs, with their personal branding. And I really wanted to bring her on and have her talk about this because your energy is really tied in some ways to how you're presenting yourself, your appearance, and not meant in a superficial way. But you'll hear us talk about it, how you just feel better. You show up differently when you've taken the time to put yourself together, whatever that means for you. It doesn't mean following rules that other people expect of you unless there's a certain job that you have to go to and you have to follow a dress code. That's different. We do talk about that a little bit, but owning how you show up. So if that means putting on makeup, if that means putting on nicer clothes, maybe not getting fully dressed up, but just not being in your pajamas all day like a lot of us probably are lately. I know I tend to change into my pajamas as soon as I get home sometimes, oftentimes. It depends on the time of day, I guess. But how you present yourself has an effect on how other people perceive you. And right or wrong, other people are going to perceive you in a certain way based on your appearance. And it's a subconscious thing, like Tiffany's going to mention. Within the first 7 seconds, 5 to 7 seconds, people have already made a snap judgment about us. We make snap judgments about other people in that first 5 to 7 seconds. And it's just a reality. How we move beyond that is up to us. If we know that that's a thing, maybe we can hold back judgment. We talk a little bit too about how if someone shows up with an unexpected appearance based on the situation, how we can move past that. If your personality and how you're owning it takes over, then we can prove that appearance doesn't matter. But then maybe that's saying that appearance does matter because it goes back to how you're owning it. Now I'm getting all philosophical and just rambling. But the point is, you're in charge of that initial perception. You can't control what the other person thinks or how they respond, but you set the tone. So how do you want to be perceived? How do you want to show up? And are you willing to own that? I think that's the main thing to take away from this conversation, is not trying to fit in, but finding who you are and how you show that to the world. Whether that's on a personal level or a business, entrepreneur, branding type level. I think you're going to enjoy this one. Here we go. Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk about this.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course. Why don't you take the floor first and just explain a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I have been working with personal branding probably long before it was actual personal branding. I was the type of individual that didn't leave her house as a child. We were dressed when we went places. You came home from school, you changed into play clothes, things of that nature. So for me, personal branding has always been kind of a part of who I am. I will be very honest with you. Growing up, I always struggled with my weight. And I think part of what we call today personal branding had to do with how I dressed and how I appeared. I never was very uncomfortable in my skin, growing up like most people. And because of that, I would often dive into clothing and as a way of expression, but it also kind of helped me psychologically take a step up, feeling better about myself. And so that was a tool that I used growing up long before we looked at this as what we would call today personal branding.
Do you do it primarily for people in like a business space, or do you present it to like, the general population, I guess I would say, like just as an everyday thing or more of a business aspect?
I actually do both.
Okay.
I think that obviously people, in business, sometimes we all just need a little bit of a refresher. And maybe you're changing careers. I've worked with people who have changed careers. Certain careers like banking are a lot more reserved in what they wear, very traditional, very straight lines, that type of a thing. As opposed to just maybe working at a creative field where people are a little more casual and but helping people kind of make a style of their own on top of it. So they have a comfort level in what they're wearing. They feel comfortable in the level or what type of outfit they're putting together, but yet also helping them to go ahead and create their own little vibe of showing their personality. Because that's, clothing shows your personality all the way through. So I've done that. I've worked with college students who are moving into a career, and obviously very casual in college these days. So, just giving those suggestions. And I'm not necessarily saying, pull out a suit type of a situation, but, all the way from a casual, nice pair of dark denim jeans with a white crisp shirt and either a sweater or a blazer, goes a long way over a ripped pair of jeans and a t-shirt that has a logo on it type of a thing. So sometimes it's very simple things.
Yeah. I was thinking as you were talking about how, we used to leave the house being all not dressed up, but, put together basically, and then come home and change into play clothes. And I remember doing that too. Like I had to wear a uniform in grade school. So you go to school, come home, you don't want to play in your uniform anymore. So you take it off, you change into play clothes and you go play. And even as I would get older and I moved more into like a job space, not necessarily career, but, different jobs that I would have, you'd have to wear certain attire at work. And I would still kind of have a little bit of that mindset where, okay, I've got to change out of these clothes when I get home. And then depending on different types of jobs that I had where it became a little looser on what you had to wear, I think there might have been a day, even a random day where I realized, oh, this works. I can leave this on all day. And, you kind of get out of that mindset of either dressing up or changing out of your clothes when you get home. The most I tend to do, I think a lot of people are probably like this, I change into my pajamas a lot of times when I get home. But I think just over time, it's just changed, and the nature of what is expected for how people dress at certain jobs has changed a little bit. And then when people try to move into, or they want to move into a different type of space, then they don't really fully understand how to dress, because what they're used to wearing and looking at as being put together and nice doesn't really translate to this new space.
Absolutely. Funny enough, I've worked in a number of industries. Like I said, basically I did work in banking, worked in a variety of fields and industries, and it's definitely a difference. And, I think that obviously, we've gotten into this casual Friday and, Friday business attire, or a little bit more simplistic. And it's been very interesting to watch how it's evolved a bit. It's often an unusual thing, at least, to see almost people in a suit and tie. When you really stop and look around, there are very few industries that have their people still dressed to that level. And because of that, I think it causes more. And I'll be honest, I used to hate dressed on Fridays, honestly, because I never, people took it as casual Fridays, like casual. And I, for a long time was never that casual. So people would often be like, oh, why are you so dressed? And I mean, my dress was literally a nice pair of jeans, maybe a pair of boots, a blazer at that point in time. I'm big on a sweater. I'm always chilly. So I always carry a sweater with me type of a thing, as opposed to literally a pair of jeans and a sweatshirt even. I'd have colleagues that would wear that. And it's been very fascinating and watching and interesting to see how society norms as far as appearance and dressing have changed. So I think it makes people uncomfortable, actually, to a certain extent, because they're not sure. And I think that's where, I've been able to step in and help. People really aren't sure what to put on that's acceptable, depending even on your age. I mean, when I look at my wardrobe over the last 20 years and how it's changed, and it's definitely become more casual. And part of that was because of the jobs that I moved to. But part of it is just because, to put a suit on is you're almost standing out of the crowd just because people aren't dressing that way. So, to me, it's about finding the right level of what you're putting on, but adding that flair of your personal style to it to make it your own and comfortable. I'm not saying don't be comfortable. I mean, I'm all about comfort. Don't get me wrong. But there's definitely, I don't buy a pair of jeans unless they're dark denim. I just don't. Like, that's just my thing. And to me, it just gives a more polished finish. So it's that simple.
When you mention about environments where people aren't necessarily wearing suits, I actually used to work in a car dealership, and they still, like, the salesmen, particularly the guys, not so much the women. Occasionally you see the women in like a suit, but they'll still be dressed up, but they wouldn't be in a suit. But the guys for sure, nice shirt and tie at least. Most of them would have like the full suit on. A lot of the managers would, the CFO, the GM, right. And then just certain areas, mostly the accounting office, who was not customer contact, would have the casual Friday. And you made me think of when I ran into a problem with, I won't say who it is, but we've actually since talked about it recently, which is weird how it came up. But I had an employee get really, really annoyed because she couldn't wear jeans on Fridays, because even though we reported to the accounting office, we were considered part of that, we were in the customer contact position. So we always had to be business casual. Right. And there were so many arguments. And it's that balance, like you were talking about, like finding that balance between what's expected of you and showing your personality and being able to navigate that, because I hate being restricted, and I hate being told what to do and what to wear. But as long as there's some breathing room, like even just recently I was talking about how I like structure, but I like to have some room to flow within that structure. Like rules are fine, but there's got to be some personality room in there.
Right.
But then you also have to know where to find that balance. Like if you're told you can't wear jeans, then I'm sorry, you can't wear jeans. Like
absolutely.
There's I don't know what I want to say, but you know what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's, it's a culture thing to a certain extent when you're getting a job or when you're starting into a new organization. Absolutely. And that's kind of a first and a basic there that you have to look into, basically. I mean, when I worked in the bank, it was my first job many moons ago after children and returning to the workforce. And, they were adamant about jeans. In fact, I actually got in trouble for wearing jeans one Friday. It was a casual Friday type of a day. And we were in a back office. I was in a back office situation. So we weren't customer facing, and that's exactly what I had on. I had on a nice pair of jeans, a white dress shirt, a blazer. I always wore shoes. And, some of the other people in the office were extremely casual, like almost like a stretch pant kind of material. And I actually got called in because of how I looked. And I was just literally dumbfounded. And I said to my manager, I said, so you're saying that I look worse than this individual who has basically stretch pants on And she said, no, I wouldn't exactly say that. She goes, it's just the policy. Jeans are not acceptable. That's just the policy. So even though, yes, I would say you probably look 100% better than this other individual, it's the policy of the company, and that's where we have to go. So, that just is what it is. And that's part of taking a job and a position with an organization or company, that you have to follow those things. So, I had to switch that out for like a black pair of slacks that, were probably a little more dressy, unfortunately. So that's why those are the reasons that I used to kind of struggle. Like, casual means something different to so many people.
Yeah.
Everybody has that level of what's comfort to them. And I'm, in an office environment, I was never a sweatshirt kind of girl. It's just me. That's just my personality. And not that there's anything wrong with it, because there's not. I've worked with entrepreneurs over the years in other positions that I've had. And I mean, these were, flip-flop kind of guys, shorts, t-shirts, and flip-flops. And we used to have great fun actually talking about clothing and wearing things. And I remember specifically having a talk with them the one day, because they were kind of much younger than I was. And I said, I understand. That's fine. I said, but there is going to be a day where you're going to have to go to somebody and ask for a business loan or, a line of credit or something like that. And I said, you're going to be sitting across the table from a gentleman who's in a suit. I'm telling you right now. I'm just telling you that's a fact. So, there will be a day where you're going to have to step up your game a little bit to do that, and that's the reality. And I think that's kind of the biggest component today, is understanding when and where.
Yeah. So kind of like just when we were talking before we hit the record button about how we kind of unconsciously judge people based on what they're wearing. Like nobody, I don't think, maybe some people do, but I believe the vast majority of people don't set out to judge someone based on how they're dressed, but it just happens, especially when you're in a particular environment. It might be different if, the guy in the suit who's the one responsible for deciding whether this other person's going to get a business loan, if he were to see that guy out on the street in t-shirt and jeans and flip-flops, he wouldn't think anything of it. But in that particular situation, there's going to be a little bit of preconceived notions going on. Right. And it reminds me about a couple of times when, again, it always goes back to the car dealership sometimes, when I had to do some interviews for cashiers that I needed to hire. And we didn't have to be like super dressed up. At one point we did have uniform tops that we had to wear, but then we still had to be conscious of what type of pants we were wearing. They got particular about our shoes and things like that. And I was responsible also for just making sure that people were following the rules, which is how we ran into the jeans issue with Casual Friday. But because Casual Friday wasn't a thing for us, but that's fine. I had one person once come in wearing jeans. I can't remember if they were ripped or not, but they might have been. And she had on like a baseball team jacket, and she just didn't look all that put together. Right. But honestly, I didn't have a lot of candidates just based off of paper that I wanted to interview. So I'm like, okay, I'll still take the interview. If she nails the questions, she's got the right personality and the right experience, I can look past what she's wearing. But my initial thought was, I don't know about this. And then unfortunately, she couldn't hang with the questions either. But the attitude, it was the attitude. The attitude was off. Guys. So I don't know. I think maybe if you can position your attitude just right, maybe people can overlook it, but that's not going to stop the initial critique, whether or not people show it or say it. That was really long-winded, but you know what I'm getting at.
No, absolutely. And it's studies say it's like 5 to 7 seconds that an impression is made. I mean, that's literally, a blink or two of your eye. It's going to tell you whether you trust this person, whether you don't. I mean, it really is deep level, like lower psychology that, you're not even getting to the point. Unfortunately, somebody walks in that's dressed nicely, pay attention to watch people that are interacting with them and watch their body language with that person that's well-dressed. It puts a little bit of a tint like, oh, unfortunately, oh, this person knows what they're talking about. This person must, have a good background of some sort or whatnot. It just is the way it is. And it's not even that we're sitting there thinking about it. It just kind of happened. It really does.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, funny enough, I went to school for fashion, and one of my professors told us a story. He worked in a car dealership many months before, and he had talked about, it was like a late day, end of the week kind of a situation. And into the dealership walked this gentleman in overalls, kind of dirty, just not looking. And he said, everybody else kind of like wandered away somehow. And he said, I just walked up to him and introduced myself and asked him what he was doing there. Well, it turns out that the gentleman was one of the largest farmers in the area and bought his wife a Cadillac with cash.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. So, everybody else in the dealership was kind of like, oh, this guy's, coming to look, he's not buying anything. And lo and behold, my professor moved forward and just, was nice enough to just specifically did not judge him by what he was wearing and ended up making a cash sale on a car, which is not something I'm sure you've worked in a car dealership.
Right.
You can tell me. I don't think that's the norm.
It is not the norm. And as the head cashier, it's actually kind of annoying. Because it means I got to go to the bank right then and there, and I got to have someone come with me because that's a lot of money to carry on you. But I see what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah, but it proves a point. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, and again, it really, when you really stop and pay attention to it and do it, just as like a little aside, when the next time if you get out in our COVID world,
right.
Just watch people. I love to watch people and pay attention to that. But it's true. I mean, that it just comes almost. And again, you almost have to pay attention to paying attention to it
Mm-hmm.
to see how you're reacting and acting towards other individuals. It's just a real thing.
Yeah. So knowing that people can surprise you based on how they look versus what actually comes of an interaction, how do you suggest we go about finding that balance between being in control as best we can of how people are going to perceive us and being ourselves and letting our personality speak for us?
I often say, like, find a signature piece of jewelry if you're a woman. One thing I never do, I very, very rarely do, is wear jeans with sneakers. I always have a dress shoe on. I wear loafers mostly, or a boot of some sort, basically. But like a little thing like that, like a man putting on a nice pair of dress shoes with a pair of jeans, totally kind of changes the difference from having a sneaker on. It's kind of a simple thing, but little things like that, like a crisp white dress shirt or shirt, have it pressed at the cleaners or iron it, whatever it is, basically. Paying attention to small details like that sometimes can make a world of difference, I've found, on how you look at somebody. If you throw on just a t-shirt and it's kind of wrinkled because you pulled it out of the dryer 3 days later, that says something basically there. And it also says something about how you feel about yourself a little bit. People are going to look at you and think like, oh, well, that wasn't really, it just makes you wonder like, oh, he doesn't really care, how he's presenting himself here.
Or maybe there could be a little bit of unworthiness under the surface too.
Well, right. And I agree with that. I mean, I think that, we've all had our ups and downs in lives in different times, basically. And, when you're not feeling the best, I mean, I make an effort on days I don't feel well to wear something nice because I know psychologically it's going to help heighten, my self-esteem, essentially.
Right.
I mean, it's a true thing. It's like fake smiling for 5 minutes.
Yeah. And
eventually you're really smiling. Little tweaks like that on there that you can do to help boost it. It does. It shows how you feel about yourself and how maybe you think people see you even, well, people don't really value me or I'm invisible, nobody really pays attention to me kind of a thing. It's small little pieces of effort that can kind of tweak an outfit from like, oh, just being anybody in the crowd to, oh, wow, like she cares about herself or he cares about himself. Look at that.
Yeah, I think it does make a difference in how we just show up, even just for ourselves, if we feel a little bit better about how we look. And totally, again, individual thing, not saying people need to wear specific things or do specific things, but what makes you feel good. Like there's the whole makeup discussion, of course. And I like wearing makeup. I've gotten a little, I don't like to use the word lax because that makes it sound like I have to wear makeup every day. But, you know, I used to every day, no matter what, I would put on new makeup every day. And kind of as I've gotten older and a little bit lazier and just like, I don't even care anymore. I'm tired, whatever.
Well, also being a parent, that totally changes your mindset on dressing.
But then also wanting to show up on social media and grow my brand and do that type of thing, I realized that however consciously or unconsciously it was, part of what was holding me back from showing up as often as I probably would otherwise was a lack of wearing makeup, and not even like a full face where I'm like all decked out, but just I have redness in my face and I've been trying to do what I can to get rid of it, but it's still here. So for me, it's just about at least covering that up. And other people are like, oh, I didn't even notice. You look so beautiful. And I'm like, thank you for that. But I still need that for me, you know, and whether it should or shouldn't be that way, you know, isn't the issue. It is that way for me. That's how it is. So that's how I'm going to take care of it. And when I do put on at least that foundation, then I feel better and I feel more put together. I feel like I can show up more authentically and professionally when I turn that camera on to do an Instagram story, you know. It makes a difference.
Oh, absolutely. You know, 100%. You know, like I said, you know, moving to a Zoom environment and being on Zoom so much, and I'm getting older, you know, I hit my 50s now. And, you know, so everything doesn't look exactly the same as it did when I was 20. So, you know, paying attention to those little things, you know, does make a difference in your mannerisms, essentially, even how you carry yourself. It makes a huge difference. I mean, putting on lipstick. I had a friend, a mom friend many moons ago who always had a lipstick in her car. And I'm like, why do you have lipstick in your car? And she's like, because if I put lipstick on, at least it makes me feel better.
Yeah.
When I'm going somewhere. And, you know, I found myself doing the same thing years later. Absolutely. Especially when you're, again, different times in your life, when you're a mom and your kids are, you know, the focus basically, and you don't put as much attention on yourself sometimes. You know, those little tweaks of things definitely make a difference. And again, it's not the shallow trying to impress people situation. It really does, for me at least, it's about how I feel about myself.
Yeah.
And interacting with others.
Right.
And what I'm presenting.
So when it comes to this Zoom environment, this online environment, what are kind of your first recommendations for someone who comes to you for help with their personal branding in that kind of space?
We do a Zoom call because I want to see kind of what they're setting to right off the bat to start with. Basically, like I said, are you sitting in your kitchen and there's dirty dishes behind you? Are you sitting in your bedroom and your bed's behind you? You know, a simple thing of either finding a blank wall if you can, or even finding, you know, put a photograph or a tapestry, a scarf, you know, put that up behind you, hang something on the wall that is not overbearing, but just gives kind of a pleasant background look. I'll give you the perfect example. I was scrolling through Facebook a few months ago and somebody was doing a live and I'm watching and I just like couldn't figure out. And I'm sitting there looking for a minute. I don't know. And I still don't know what it exactly was, to be very honest with you. But the way the woman is sitting and with the things behind her, it was kind of like her living room or something. She literally had like antlers sticking out of, and it was like perfectly situated.
Oh no.
I mean, it was almost as if she did it on purpose because it was centered. And I was like, oh my gosh, how do you not see? And again, I know that I'm very observant about things. That's just my personality and whatnot. But I thought to myself, if you're trying to sell me like coaching services or some type of something, I'm looking at is thinking, okay, you're not paying attention to the details.
Right.
Do I really want to work with you? So as simple as that, like your background of just making that nice and simple behind that, putting on, a simple top, you don't have to get fancy. I mean, that's at least a good thing about COVID, if there is anything, but throw a scarf on to take it up a notch.
Yeah.
Have a pretty necklace, that type of a thing. For the men, put on at least a pressed shirt of some sort, whether it be, if you're casual enough to be able to wear a t-shirt, great. If it's a dress shirt or a golf shirt, make sure it's pressed. Your lighting is huge. That's always a big, big thing. And any natural light you can find is always better. Buy a ring light if you're, you don't have that light and you're going to be on Zoom or virtually like that a lot of the time. But your tone of voice, pay attention to that. It's going to be a little bit, because everything's like magnified in a different way online.
Yeah.
Slow your speech down. I can get very excited myself and, blah, 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 blah. Well, that kind of really doesn't come across so well, and the genuineness, people, again, are staring at your face so much more than they would even in a face-to-face meeting. Be genuine when you smile. You can tell a genuine smile by looking at the curves in your eyes. Is it just a ha ha ha, or are they legitimately facially engaged and that's a genuine laugh over something? So again, there's simple things. I mean, even gestures, be careful with your gestures. I can be a person that talks with my hands a lot. I find myself either making sure my hands are down or sitting on them from time to time, depending. So very small things. It's not huge over the top. But there are things that people do notice, and it's represented in your brand because you are presenting yourself in whatever that picture is in that box is what people are going to resonate with.
Yeah. I've noticed for me too that another thing that would prevent me from doing like an Instagram story or a video or something like that would be my top, because in person in the mirror, looks totally fine. I'm covered. I'm good. For some reason, when I flip that camera on, all of a sudden I got like this, all this cleavage, like it's like in your face. And I'm like, where is that even coming from? Because in the mirror, it doesn't look like that. But you turn on the camera and it's like, okay, I'm going to put this zip up on and zip it all the way up to my neck. I'm going to buy some higher collared shirts, not a turtleneck or anything, but, something that covers a little bit more. Just for me, not saying that that's right or wrong for anybody else. It depends on what your brand is or what your look is. For me, it's just like, I don't have anything against it. And I used to wear different tops, I think, when I was younger, but as I've gotten older, I'm like, you know what? Let's just move this up just a little bit.
Right. And again, it really does tie back a lot to how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
We all have clothes in our closets that we have and we've had far too long, but we like them. But when we put them on, we're kind of like, it's okay. It's not the, I feel awesome, I'm ready to go kind of look.
For me, it was like realizing that for some reason, just in the camera with certain shirts, it was like, it looks like I'm not wearing anything or I'm not wearing enough, So it's just finding that presentation.
Absolutely. The colors can make a difference. Obviously, you don't want something to come across too obnoxiously bright with your lighting, just depending. Like I love fuchsia. I have a lot of pieces of fuchsia, especially tops and jackets, things of that nature. But, sometimes it just looks a little, I don't know, too much, even when I sit down and look at myself before I get onto a call with somebody. So just paying attention to that. I mean, the nudes, like sometimes you just have to be careful because I've gotten onto a call or two and it's like, wait, is that a blouse or are they kind of like going, you know what I mean? Like, so, little things, very little things like that make, and pick a color. I always say pick a color too, that you feel good in, but also like if you don't know your colors, pay attention to people that compliment you and what those items are. because things that look good on you are good colors for you, or the ones people are going to say, wow, you look really good today. I love that. Like, I love the top, or, you just look so fresh, or, that's usually going to be a color that you obviously do well with. So, you can pay attention to that kind of a thing as well. If you're not really, some people aren't sure, and that's okay. That's basically what I've built a business around, is helping people just small tweaks. Again, a lot of it's small tweaks. It's not necessarily, you don't have to go out and spend thousands of dollars on a new wardrobe. That's not my message at all, but find a good pair of fitting black pants, some of the basics.
Yeah.
And then mix in, some of the other things that are maybe, if you like a little bit of a trend, again, have the foundation of the basics that are well structured, and then put on that extra flirty top that has a little bit of a different design to it, if you want to spice it up.
So I know that the term personal branding tends to trip some people up, because they're like, I don't know if I'm a brand. How am I a brand? How does this work? How do you explain? I know that's kind of what we've been talking about, but how do you explain just that idea of personal branding?
Well, I think that in this age of social media, I think that's where people have to understand. And again, it's just being aware of what you're posting. Like, I have my son and now daughter-in-law, they've been together since high school, and, trying to explain to my son and my daughter-in-law, like, okay, you guys are now moving into getting jobs. And, it's a real thing now that businesses and companies will look for your social media accounts.
Yeah, they will.
To see what is represented on there. And I'm not saying, you want to just be conscious of that.
Right.
So where you are in your life and what you do, like, I personally try to keep my Facebook account more personal, business things. I mean, I've turned colleagues down that have tried to friend me on Facebook. Not that, and I'm not a person that puts a ton of stuff out there, but just because to me, the professional is the kind of the professional world. You're not going to put a picture of you in a bikini, in Cancun on LinkedIn, I would hope, and I've explained that to people.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? That's an easy way to separate things too. Go ahead and put obviously your more professional pieces and things on LinkedIn. And yes, you can put some things on your Facebook on that, but do just realize that, again, it's not even that you have to say anything, but what you're presenting, and a picture speaks 1,000 words. It's going to be viewed, whether you like it or not. This is just kind of the way society is moving at this point. I've had a couple colleagues who have said, that they've been in businesses, in positions of management. And, there was one friend of mine, he said, I had this star candidate for a sales position, fabulous in person, presented extremely well, spoke wonderfully. HR looked up her social media, and it was nothing of what our company represents. It was a total, personal, hanging at the beach, doing that kind of stuff. And he's like, I could not hire because it was a sales position, and it was an on the road kind of a sales position. They said, if we send her out representing our company and people went and looked her up on social media, it just doesn't represent who we are.
Right.
So we couldn't do it. So it's trying to just explain to people, where and when to post things,
right.
First of all. Think twice sometimes about what you're posting on top of it. I know, we all kind of see something funny that a friend puts up, and you think of a funny kind of response that would be hysterical to the two of you. But if you're not part of that conversation, it may come off as something vulgar. You don't know. Like, you know what I mean? It just could be so misunderstood. So just to kind of be aware of those types of things, and even your settings, your privacy settings online, make sure they're tightened up. So things maybe that are really, more of your fun and your family things that you wouldn't really want a business person to look at, are tucked away at least.
Yeah. And there is a way on Facebook that you can do like Can you
Yep.
still do that where you can select like only me or only friends and family
Right.
or certain people?
Yep.
So yeah, just
Yeah.
being mindful. I think, like you said, it comes down to just being conscious
Mm-hmm.
of what you're presenting. Not to say that what anyone would ever present is right or wrong, because that's always going to be
Right.
different based
Oh,
on the
yeah,
person, based on the
absolutely.
business, based on what you want your perception to be. But that's the question. What do you want
Right.
people's perception of you to be? You can only control it from, one standpoint and only control it so far, but it still starts with you and what you're putting out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, again, I often said to my children, because I have older children, basically, I said, it's for that age group. I said, it's not that, myself and my friends and growing up, we didn't do, silly and probably even stupid things at certain points. We just never documented it like you
Right.
guys do today. Like everything is so
Uh-huh.
documented, you're kind of putting it out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, it's, it changes as you get older and different things of that nature, basically, and what you want people to know or understand about you. And it's actually a very interesting thing to watch too, because I think generationally, looking at what is acceptable to the younger group as opposed, even to myself at this point, it's just a different world of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And now with so many different types of social media going on from, TikTok, Instagram, the whole 9 yards, just pay attention. That's all. That's really my biggest advice is pay attention to what you're putting out there
Mm-hmm.
and how it can be perceived, because life is really about perception.
Right.
And again, a lot of it's subconscious. You don't even realize it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my biggest part on, branding, because again, because you're out there and social media is what it is, whether you're a brand like Nike and you're selling something and you're a company, or whether you're just an individual who, is a mom, people are going to look at what you're presenting, and that's your personal brand. You're
Right.
what you are about. And it's as simple as that. You don't have to be, a big business person that's looking at something, but it's just what you're putting out there. People are going to view and take in and have an impression of you. And that's reality,
Right.
unfortunately.
Well, this has been a really great conversation. I've loved all of this. And I think it's an important conversation to have, because as much as we want to talk about how we shouldn't judge people and, we shouldn't judge a book by its cover or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
like we were saying, it's subconscious. It's not that anyone's trying to judge anybody. It's just, it
No.
happens. And we just, like you said, we keep saying that constant message has been going through this whole conversation. It's just being aware,
Mm-hmm.
aware of what you're putting out there and how other people might respond. And if you're not okay with that or you're not ready for that, then maybe there might be some tweaks to be made. Not for other people,
Exactly.
but for you and your own personal energy and how that's going to come off then.
100%. I mean, think about where you want to go. What are the things that you want in your life? What direction are you heading career-wise, personal-wise? It does make a difference, and you just think about those things.
Mm-hmm.
So how, it's almost like doing a presentation. How do you want to lay the presentation out? What do you want people to kind of understand about you?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the way of the world today. But it's just stop and think. That's my biggest thing. Stop and think about how you want this to come across as others view it.
Yeah. Would you agree too, if I were to say, like, going kind of back real quick to the personality aspect of it, like if you're someone who maybe might not dress the way that someone in your industry might be expected to dress, but that's who you are and that's how you want to show up, would you agree that if you own it and you go ahead with that, then make that your thing, then that that's your personal branding, that's your style, and that's great, but you got to own it? Or would you agree with that?
I would agree 100% that, I think there are people that have pushed the envelope as far as an organization goes. Yes, 100%. If you, again, and I think that's what clothing is about to a certain extent. whether you're a funky kind of dresser in a more conservative area, if you're walking in there with your head held high and you look self-assured because you feel self-assured, people are going to kind of read into that and go, well, you know what, that's just Susie. Susie always kind of wears that quirky thing, basically. And people learn to somewhat understand that. But it does come across with personality. And again, that's what I think all of this is about for me, is from the inside out. What makes me feel good? What makes me feel powerful? What makes me feel, ready to take on the day and what's ahead of me? Mm-hmm. So that could be the funkiest one in the room, basically. But yeah, if she's owning it, or he's owning it, then, usually it just kind of sways people, I think, a little bit to like, oh, well, yeah, that's just her.
Yeah.
Or him.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So why don't you let everyone know how they can find you and connect with you?
Sure. So my website is theimageoption.com. You can go to the website. I'm also on Instagram, and I'm also on Twitter. You can find me there. I'm also on the new and upcoming Clubhouse, and that's just my first name, Tiffany, and CL, my last name. C is in Christopher and L is in Luciani. So yeah, connect with me anywhere, anyhow. I'm always excited and enjoy a conversation because, again, I understand how it helps people from a psychological standpoint. Mm-hmm. And, I think we all want to champion each other. And again, little tweaks along the way can make a big difference. And I'm always around to help and excited to help. Really am.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tiffany. I've loved this.
Thank you. This has been wonderful. Yes, I greatly appreciate it. And anytime, happy to talk about it.
Well, that was a really fun conversation with Tiffany. And like we were saying, I feel like it's a really important conversation to have, talking about how your personal appearance and how you show up affects your energy, because that then in turn affects how other people perceive you. And while absolutely it's a hard conversation to have when we've got to talk about the fact that we're subconsciously making judgments about other people based on how they look when we first meet them, the fact is that's just a reality, and it's up to us how we present ourselves, how we want other people to see us. How do you want to show up? You can only control it that far. What other people do with it is still their personal perception tied in with their previous experiences and what they already believe. So you can't control that end of it. But what do you have control over? That's where you take care of throwing your personality into it and owning who you are and how you show up, no matter what that looks like. Not worrying about what you have to show up as, but owning how you show up. I hope that you found this conversation valuable and helpful. And if you did, please share it. Go ahead and share it to your Facebook, your Instagram, wherever you are on social media. Tag me, tag Tiffany, let us know what you liked, what was helpful. And as always, let me know what you need more of. I invite you to jump into my Facebook group, The Energy Within, and share your feedback, and also be there for any group Reiki sessions that I do, live card pulls. And if you're looking for more of that clarity, more of that energy boost, you can book a one-on-one Reiki session with me. The link is in the show notes, and you can go ahead and read what it's all about, look at a few testimonials on the amazing transformations and clarity that have come for the people that I have done Reiki for. And I also invite you to jump into my virtual fitness studio, where we are doing Turbo Kick and PiYo classes and having lots of fun. Link is in the show notes for that too, and you can look and see what each of those formats are about and if they are for you and which membership option or drop-in rates are right for you. Thank you as always for listening, and I'll see you next week.